That Zoom lady introduction will always give you,
Yeah.
hey, ladies and gentlemen, whoa, don't adjust your screen. It is just us guys. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, J Dubs. This is JK'z Rewatchable Hour. With me, as always, the one, the only, the most iconic gentleman on this show, probably the only gentleman on this show tonight, Mr. George Muzzy. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
So we have put together a little show about one of our favorite uh, Westerners, cowboys, outlaws. He's a legend, the one and only Billy the Kid. We're going to talk about the killing, the murder of Sheriff Brady. We're also going to discuss about the night that Billy the Kid does die. And then we're going to lastly talk about whether or not Brushy Bill Roberts was actually Billy the Kid uh, in the flesh in the 1950s. So, George, why don't you take it away?
Okay. Um, Before we get up to the killing of Brady, um, now none of this is set in stone that this is where he was born, but they say no, it's believed that he was born on November 23rd, 1859 in New York City's West Side. There's no paperwork proving that. That's kind of important. That's one important note for later.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the other the other point was when McSween, no, not McSween. Who is the boss? Was the boss McSween? Yes.
Tunstall.
No, Tunstall. Yes.
Yep, John Tunstall.
I always get the two names confused with the two guys. When Tunstall was killed, it is similar to the original movie, The Young Guns, um, where they're riding, but at the time they were riding into town. They weren't riding out of town. That was the difference. And um, the boys all did leave Tunstall on his carriage, and they left. Now, Billy and a couple other of the boys that could still see them when he was ambushed believed that Bob Ollinger was the one who killed Tunstall, and he shot him in the back. That's what it appeared. That's what it looked like to them. And they all of these people that claimed that said they saw that also claimed that they'd seen other people killed by Ollinger by being shot in the back. That he didn't face him man to man when he killed him. That's a little key for later. So after kind of toward the end of pretty much the Lincoln County War, when it was pretty much over at this point, um, Billy the Kid and three other guys were in Lincoln County. No, we're in the town of Lincoln, and Bob Ollinger and three other guys were walking down the street. They were Billy and his guys were hiding behind an adobe wall, and a shootout began, and um, Sheriff Brady was killed. He died that day, and then another one of the four died, succumbed to his wounds like the next day. Um, the other two got away. I don't, and then the four guys, Billy and his crew left. However, before leaving, Billy did approach Sheriff Brady's body and retrieve his pearl handled 44. Um, Now some claim, I've never heard any claims that Billy was not present at the killing. Everything that shows, including later on in his trial. So after Sheriff Brady is killed, they have like an emergency election for the new sheriff. And Pat Garrett is elected sheriff.
Mhm.
And his main purpose of being hired, of being elected, is to go after Billy. Now, the reason it was done so quickly was because they didn't want friends of Billy to not vote for Garrett. So they did it quickly. It was a rather quick election. It was within days of Brady's death. Um, it was either I believe it was Christmas Eve morning or Christmas Day morning of, I believe, 1878, when Billy and a couple others were in a stone, like a stone building in the middle of the prairie, when Garrett's crew came up on them, and a shootout attacked, and Billy and one or two others were taken into custody. They were held in the Lincoln County. They were held in the Lincoln County jail. And at that point, the district, well, I got a few things here. The Lincoln County district attorney, whose name I'm probably gonna butcher, is Reinerson. W.L. Reinerson. It was, the paperwork was submitted to the Lincoln County, no, to the County of Lincoln, 3rd Judicial District. It was in April of 1879, and it was the territory, not the state of New Mexico, the territory of New Mexico versus John Middleton, Henry Brown, and William Bonney, alias Kidd, alias William Antrim. When comes to said territory by the attorney, Reinerson, district attorney of the said county, the change of venue in the above entitled cause as to the said defendant, William Bonney, alias Kidd, for reasons set forth in the following. He basically says that it would be an unfair trial with Billy the Kid's peers in Lincoln because he had so many friends in Lincoln. So it would be unfair. It doesn't say, oh no, it does say, it says right here that it was sworn and subscribed before the court on April 21st, 1879. One day later, the change of venue, no, yes, the change of venue was approved by the judge, filed by J.G. Moore, for the judge. And they would go to the county of Donna Ana in Santa Fe, outside of the county, for the trial. So before the trial, they obviously, Sheriff Garrett and his deputies had to get Billy and the prisoners from Lincoln to Santa Fe. They partially took a train, and then the rest of the way they took a coach. During the travel to Santa Fe, and there were people that were trying to attack them because they wanted to lynch mobs and whatnot were trying to get the prisoners. And they had agreed, Garrett had agreed with his head deputies that if they were attacked, they would arm the prisoners to help them defend the train or the coach. So, I got a few affidavits I'm going to go through here, having to do with the trial. Apparently, because of a fire they were having in 1949, when the lawyer that had been talking to Brushy Bill Roberts was trying to get the paperwork, they were having a hard time finding the paperwork. He was just trying to put all of the paperwork together so whether he could prove it or not. Now, on March of 1881, which is when the trial's getting ready to take place, request for instructions by defendant's counsel. So this is by Billy the Kid's counsel. The instructions were, under the evidence, the jury must either find the defendant guilty of murder of the first degree or acquit him. The jury will not be justified in finding the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree unless they are satisfied from the evidence. If the jury is satisfied from the evidence to the exclusion of all reasonable doubt, they must acquit. This is what the defendant wanted. Now, Judge Bristol, on the other hand, his instructions to the jury were basically as followed. If the defendant either inflicted one or more of the fatal wounds causing Brady's death, or that he was present at the time and the place of killing and encouraged, incited, aided, or abetted, advised, or commanded, you'll find him guilty. If such killing was without justification or excuse. The third one is that such killing of Brady was caused by inflicting upon his body a fatal gunshot wound. The fourth one is that the fatal wound was either inflicted by the defendant from a premeditated design to affect Brady's death, or that he was present at the time. So basically, the judge was saying, if he was there, find him guilty.
And as you had already said earlier, the facts state that he and some of the other boys, regulators, if you want, were hiding behind a wall. So I just wanted to point that out. Or you're doing great research. Continue.
Yeah, I missed one that I wanted. I just remembered. I just gotta find it. Just cannot.
So as you're looking for it, I'll just ad lib here real quick. So it almost sounds like no matter what, this judge was like, I hate you, Billy the Kid, so I'm going to try to throw everything at you without the chance of you being acquitted. I mean, he could have been taking a nap, not that he was, but he could have been taking a nap on that wall because he was there.
Yeah. Mention of amnesty. That was Governor Wallace. I didn't want that. There's one in here, and I can't seem to find the affidavit. What's the motion for change of venue? It might be in a different part. There, I don't know why I can't find it, but there was an affidavit that was submitted by the prosecuting attorney that he had 3 witnesses that he needed to get. The question that he needed to get these. He needed these witnesses to be able to go to the trial in Santa Fe. But not only did he have to get them there, but they weren't going to be able to make whatever business or whatever they ran or whatever they did. They were going to lose money from being there. So he literally had the county of Lincoln and approved that they would give him $1,000 to pay his witnesses so they wouldn't lose money or anything while they were in, while they were in Santa Fe. Now, I don't have the date. Oh, wait, the instructions to the jury. So the instructions to the jury were filed on April 9th, 1881. Oh, no. Yeah, April 9th, 1881 was when the instructions of the jury, that was when the trial ended. The the verdict was also given. No, was given on April 9th, 1881, which means very, very little deliberation.
Yeah.
And that he was guilty, all, 100% by all of the jury. And then on April 13th, which is only 4 days later, the sentence was given by the judge. And so basically when he declared that he was to be hanged was 4 days after the trial and the verdict. So not a whole lot of deliberation here. So then they transported him obviously back to Lincoln County. Now, kind of to link the two together, to kind of link them together, not necessarily the movie this time, but if you also, for Young Guns 2, if you also got the soundtrack to it, that's why the song Santa Fe is there. No Justice in Santa Fe is because that's where his trial was, not in Lincoln County.
Right.
So,
A lot of our listeners or whoever's going to watch this, obviously, George, you do tremendous research. I wish I had that in me. I just cheat and go to Google. But anyways, so many people, if you think about Billy the Kid, they say, "Oh yeah, Lincoln, right? Lincoln County War, right? And all that." But so many people don't know about the important part of the whole Santa Fe
right,
and all that. So I applaud you for continuing to bring up the Santa Fe because that also plays a part. Because obviously, when they watch the movie, I mean, don't take our word for it, but when you watch the movie, you're gonna be like, wait a minute, there's no mention of the Santa Fe.
no,
The only thing that's mentioned in the movie is called the Santa Fe Trail or the Santa Fe
right,
Ring. I'm sorry, I apologize.
yeah, yeah,
So I'm glad that you have mentioned that several times because that is also very key to part 2 and maybe part 3 of this show that we're going to do down the road. So
right.
continue, sir.
So, so then that brings us to he's being held in Lincoln County in the jail, and his the two deputies that are in charge of the prisoners are Bob Ollinger and, forgive me if I don't remember his first name, but Bell.
Oh, yeah.
Bell. They're in charge of the prisoners. Now, when every day when it came time for lunch, they wouldn't eat in the jail necessarily. Bob Ollinger would take the other prisoners and go across the street to the tavern and eating house, and they would eat, and they would bring back Billy the Kid's meal. And when they bring the meal back, Billy eats, and Bell is allowed to go have his lunch. Now, one day, and where he got the gun is questionable. Where Billy got the gun, there's several different theories, and nobody knows exactly. But it is believed, and now I know in the movie it was Jane Greathouse.
Jane Greathouse, I love her.
In reality, there is no Jane Greathouse.
Yep.
There is a James Greathouse. And him and his wife had visited Billy several times in Lincoln County Jail. And it is said that they did put a pistol in the outhouse. So whether Billy got the gun from the outhouse or just surprised Bell, but he didn't want to shoot Bell, but Bell fired at him, so he or attempted to fire at him, causing Billy to fire, and Bell died and fell down the stairs. Hearing the gunshot, Bob Ollinger came out and he used Bob's shotgun to shoot him. Now, and he shot him from the window, and then he had help from a couple locals to take the irons off and to take the irons off of his legs. He was able to get them off of his arms because it's well known that Billy had large wrists and small hands. But he had to get the shackles off of his legs. He had locals help him, and they gave him a horse for him to leave. And then he left. And eventually, Pat Garrett hunted him down in Fort Sumter. In Fort Sumter, it was the night of July 14th, 1881. It was Poe, McKinney, and Garrett who went to Pete Maxwell's house, and Garrett leaves Poe and McKinney on the porch and goes to Maxwell's bed. Garrett asks Pete where Billy was. Pete said that he was around, but he hadn't seen him in a while, so he thinks he might have left. Then a man, and this is near in midnight. It's dark out, and it's definitely, I believe they said it was near midnight. A man walks past Poe and McKinney, and according to Garrett, sprang quickly into the door, looking back, and called twice in Spanish, "Who comes there?"
Yep.
No one replied, and he came in. No hat, and either bare feet or in his stocking feet, a revolver in his right hand, and a butcher knife in his left. He approached Garrett. Before he reached the bed, Garrett asked Pete, "Who is it, Pete?" He received no reply. Garrett thought it might be Pete's brother-in-law, Manuel Abreu, who was wanted to know Poe's and McKinney's business. He approached the bed, almost touching Pat's knee, and whispered, "Who are they, Pete?" Then Pete said, "That's him." The kid must have noticed at the same time. He raised his pistol, a self-cocker, close to Garrett, and quickly retreated across the room. He cries, "K&S, K&S, who's that, who's that?" Garrett drew his revolver and fired through his threw his body aside and fired again, but to no avail. The kid had already died. Poe and McKinley entered, threw their guns down, and yelled, "Don't shoot! Don't shoot!" Garrett told them he got the kid. They both asked if Garrett had shot the wrong man. He then mentioned in his book that neither men knew the kid. On July 15th, 1881. Now we're talking, this is that day, like the very next day. The Undertaker says the bullet that killed Billy the Kid came from Garrett's gun. The court said that it was a justified kill and he was buried that day. It was claimed that Billy fired even though no bullet was found. Later, both Poe and Garrett said Garrett did not kill Billy, and Poe even published a narrative that contradicted Garrett's. So, first of all, I have little back and forth to show whether or not Garrett was truthful in his book or not. And then I got a little twist that conspiracy theory lovers are gonna like.
I have a question for you though, George.
Yes.
I didn't want to interrupt you because
No.
you were just doing awesome. So all of our viewers, all of our listeners, if you've never seen Young Guns 1 or 2, this may seem weird that you're like, what? So when I have a question for you, I want your opinion. When Billy the Kid, after he shot Bell, and then he went back upstairs, he got the gun. Now in the movie, it says that there was 18 dying.
Yes.
I want to ask you your opinion. Do you
So-
think that is a? I know we talked about it months ago on another show, but
Yeah.
here, right now, what is your opinion?
The first thing right now, you're on your laptop, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have access to your phone.
Mhm.
I want you to Google how much today's dollar was worth in 1881.
Didn't know there was going to be a damn test today.
No, it's a simple one. Like what a dollar would be worth at that time.
Okay, what is today's dollar worth in 1881? She's putting me on the spot, listeners. It's
Well,
not
I
fair.
know what $500 in 1881 would be worth today, and that would be like $1,400 or $14,000. But I don't know what a dollar back today would be worth back then, or vice versa, whatever.
Well, I'm just going to say this: that I'm an idiot and I don't really know how to.
It doesn't matter.
But anyway, go ahead. Yep.
The point is, in today's market, I can go and buy a box of shells from easily like a box of 5 shells for roughly $10. So that's in today's market. I mean, you can get cheaper ones, but a basic box of shells is usually around $10. That's $2 a shell in today's market. What are we talking? We're talking 125, no, 145 years later.
Yeah.
145 years later. So who would put, I mean, I imagine back then it was probably, I don't know, 20 cents a shell.
Yeah.
Who the heck has, what is it? $3.60 to put in each barrel.
Right.
To put in their shotgun, in their double barrel shotgun.
Yeah, I'm going to let you
Oh.
continue here in a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
So because we're both fans of Billy the Kid, and me personally, with all the myths that goes on, just like when somebody talks about,
Right.
Babe Ruth, did he really call his shot? Me personally, I want to believe that actually happened, just because
Right.
with all the other myths. So yeah, I wanted to ask you that question, just in case some people are.
Yeah. That's my only point, is that it doesn't make sense for him to have done it. I'm not saying that he didn't do it.
Yep.
It wouldn't make sense money wise. Okay. So we're going to go back and look at some of the things that Garrett had put in his book, and I'll let you decide, and then I'll let you guess, and then I'll tell you whether it was true or not. And this first one is in the first Young Guns movie.
Okay.
The killing of the bounty hunter in the tavern that bragged that he was going to hunt down Billy and kill him was told by several people, not just, was told by several people. Several people told everybody this. Now, do you remember the scene in the movie?
I do.
Yes. Do you believe that to be true or false?
No, I think that's false.
That is true. That is
Damn it.
absolutely true. And Billy did shoot him down.
Oh, wait.
A strange turn of event. As I recently mentioned this to you, I believe this is the scene in the. I don't think they played it out. I've never seen the video, but remember I was telling you the song "Modern Day Cowboy" by
Yes.
Tesla. The first verse is about Billy walking into a bar. I believe this is the scene.
Oh, okay.
And Billy ended up killing the guy. I don't know if it happened where he asked to see the guy's gun and took all the rounds out. I don't know if he did all of that, but he did end up killing this bounty hunter.
Do you have a name or a date by any chance? Because believe it or not, our listeners and subscribers, I did do some research. So
I do not have a date on this bounty hunt, on when he did this, but I know it was before. It was before the killing of Brady, and it was before they went to Lincoln to defend McSween at his house.
Right.
It was before that.
Okay.
Now, the next one, Pat Garrett says Billy the Kid had 30 or 40 men held up in the house. After it was over, that was in McSween's house. So, do you think that's true, that they had 30 or 40 men?
I do.
If they did, nobody knows what happened to them, because only 4 or 5 escaped, and they did not find the bodies of more than 3 other people in the house. So it's believed that he may have only had 8 or 9. He could have had more, but nobody knows where they would have ended up. So there's not 100%. That one's not 100% whether it's true or not. Now, just coincidental, as claimed by Pat Garrett, Bob Ollinger had 18 dimes in each barrel of his shotgun. That, to me, that sounds ridiculous, because today, and at the time when I wrote this, you could buy a round for around 90 cents to about $2, depending on how many you buy. And second of all, I had watched a documentary where they didn't, well, they used current dimes, and that didn't do anything. But then they used relatively close, they cut pieces of metal that were made of the same material that dimes were made of back then. and they fired it into actually a pig hide, which without the skin, that's pretty much like
Equivalent to, yeah.
the equivalency to a human, and it barely penetrated.
Yeah.
So it would have hurt, but would it have killed? That's still a question, but okay. Okay. So I'm gonna little disclaimer before I say this next one. This does not reflect our feelings from the show. But I'm going to say this word for word how it was said back then. The famous phrase told by Billy in Young Guns 2. No. There's a famous saying that was said in Young Guns 2. In Young Guns 2, Dave Rudabaugh said this. He goes, "I've killed 21 men, not counting Mexicans and Indians." So it was not Dave Rudabaugh in reality that said that. It was Billy the Kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But in the movie, it was Dave Rudabaugh.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh.
yeah. Now Pat Garrett claims that John W. Poe and Thomas Kip McKinney didn't know Billy the Kid, but many sources have stated that Billy the Kid used to play poker with John W. Poe and Thomas Kip McKinney.
Uh-huh.
And they even claimed that they knew him well. They knew him well enough to know him. So now at this point, there were several people that stated this. When they questioned, is that Billy? Did you shoot the wrong guy? Several people have said that they have heard a story that Billy the Kid and Pat Garrett, who at one point were pretty good friends,
Yep.
they had worked together. They weren't as close as they were in the movie, but they'd worked together on several different cattle jobs, work on certain farms and ranches together. But several people had heard this story that Billy the Kid and Pat Garrett had met privately after Billy's capture. And they made a deal that after the trial, he said, obviously, if you are acquitted at the trial, we never had this conversation. If you're found guilty, you escape. And there is this Mexican guy that they both knew around the same age as Billy. He's half Mexican. And he looked, strangely enough, like Billy the Kid. And Pat Garrett had numerous times, it's even stated in his book, that Billy was somehow trying to darken his skin to make himself look Mexican.
Interesting.
So that way, if Billy and this Mexican American go to Fort Sumter around the middle of July, 1881, and Billy says no, and Billy gets the guy kind of drunk to where the guy said, the guy all of a sudden, he's hungry. Well, hey, Billy, you tell him to go, why don't you tell him, hey, why don't you go over and see if Pete Maxwell has butchered today?
Which is stated in the movie. Yep.
Just stated in the movie. You go and see if he's butchered, go ask him, and that would explain a few things. When this guy walked past Poe and McKinney, they didn't recognize him. And why they questioned, are you
Did you
sure you
shoot?
got the right guy?
Yep.
And why literally in less than a day, in less than 24 hours, because they buried Billy before sunset.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. So
we're
nobody.
talking from midnight to maybe 4 in the afternoon. Billy's declared a legal death, and buried.
Yeah. I tell you what. Hold that thought for 2 seconds.
Okay.
We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we will come right back. That Zoom lady, I tell you, she introduces us. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. I am J Dubs. I'm with my great friend, the one and only iconic George Muzzy. We are talking, Billy the Kid, Sheriff Brady, the night that Billy the Kid was allegedly shot. Was he shot? Was he not shot? Is there a conspiracy? And now we're going to continue right where George left off, and we're going to go eventually right into whether or not the Brushy Bill Roberts is
Yeah.
or was Billy the Kid. George, take it away.
Okay. So after his death, several people had claimed that they'd seen Billy the Kid after his death. No one knows for sure. I mean, we will never know for sure, but the issue that with Brushy Bill Roberts, he actually in the movie he went to a lawyer, or he had contacted a lawyer. In reality, the lawyer contacted him because someone else stated that he was Billy the Kid. And this lawyer looked him up. And he ended up, during this time, it was in 1949, sometime in early 1949. And I want to say in early 51, or sometime in 1951 is when Brushy Bill Roberts passed away. So during the time when he finally got Brushy Bill Roberts to talk to him about it, Brushy was, he's an aging man. He's in his 90s. So some of the story took a while, and some of the stories he seemed to be stepping around things. But he had told him, he goes, I don't want you to get me brought up. I want my pardon that I was promised, but at the same time, I don't want to be incriminated for something else at the same time. So he stepped around some of the topics that would incriminate him. He did answer questions about certain things, but he didn't go too far into it to incriminate him in another way. Because first of all, we all know that no matter what, maybe he killed Brady, maybe he didn't. However, we do know for a fact that he killed Bob Ollinger and Bell. But, he didn't want to incriminate himself for anything that you didn't know, that wasn't known. So when talking with him, he had said a few things that today, we can look it up on the internet or other ways, and we can discover things. In the late 1940s, early 1950s, you couldn't do that, obviously. So he knew some details that weren't really well known. The one detail was that, was different things about Brady's death, and that they were behind that the shootout took place across an adobe wall. And he did also tell the fact that on the trip from Lincoln to Santa Fe for the trial, that Garrett had talked to them and his upper sheriffs to let them know, his upper deputies to let them know that if we get attacked, we will arm the prisoners. Certain things like that he knew. And he also knew there was just so many little details that unless you were there, you probably wouldn't know. That actually it took the lawyer a lot of research to find out if these were fact or not. And he did discover that they were fact, but they weren't published. They weren't printed anywhere. He had to go back and look harder. Brushy Bill Roberts claimed a lot of different things that where he went, like he went all over the place at that point. Now, one of the keys is everybody states that Billy the Kid was born in New York City, or it's believed. If you believe Brushy Bill Roberts' story, Brushy Bill Roberts claims he was born in Texas. So that would be a difference, but there's no proof. Now, he did mention going to Oklahoma, going to all these other places when he was younger, but never claimed. He did go to New York City later in life after the Pat Garrett incident in Fort Sumter, but he was not born there. So that's one major discrepancy. But like I said, there's no documentation, like no birth certificate that says that he was born in New York City, or at least none has been found.
So basically, Brushy Bill Roberts could either be trying to make a name off of a notorious individual, or could have been Billy the Kid.
Right.
Continue.
Right. Now when he was discredited after the lawyer got all of this information put together, he made an audience with the governor of the state of New Mexico. I'm pretty sure in the 50s it was a state by then. I believe. Because I believe at that point the only ones that weren't a state was maybe Hawaii and Alaska. They were territories. I don't know if they were states. But I'm pretty sure New Mexico was already a state. But he made an audience with the governor of New Mexico. And he took Brushy there. And according to the lawyer, while there, he was only supposed to meet with the governor and his clerk. Instead, the governor had invited several people to join them because at the governor's mansion, there was like a press conference room, and he had them meet there. And just to name some of the people, one of the people that was there, well, two of the people that were there were the children of Pat Garrett.
Oh, okay.
And there was a few others there. And Brushy Bill Roberts got nervous. He answered all of their questions, but the way he answered them didn't seem right. It seemed like he was grasping at straws when he was telling the story. According to his lawyer, right after the meeting with the governor, Brushy Bill Roberts was taken to a hospital, suffering from a stroke. He believes the stroke started during the meeting. And that's what made him stammer a little more than usual, more than, I don't know how you could say this, but more than a 90-some-year-old man would stammer.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that he's 90 would tell you, he's not going to talk the way he did when he was 20. So they discredited him as being Billy the Kid. And even though he technically, he died a free man, whether he was free from the trial or not, he was still technically a free man, and he didn't live much longer. But Brushy Bill Roberts had claimed that he went all over the western part of the country and even went into Florida and New York a little bit and the East Coast. And he even joined the Rough Riders for a little while. Now, whether he did or not, or it was just the ramblings of an old man, because paperwork before the 1900s was kind of, and he went by several different names. But at one point, he went by the name Texas Kid. And there are many people that claim when they saw the Texas Kid, they said, he looks a lot like Billy the Kid. Like people that knew Billy the Kid said, he looks a lot like Billy. So, I mean, everybody can make their own opinion whether he is or not. But the biggest thing is he did not tell. He was not one of the people that told who that Pat Garrett and him had a deal. But there was affidavits from the Vero Gallego, said that the Kid and Florencia Chavez did much target practice at their home, so he knew Billy really well, and that when he met, that he had seen him well after Pat Garrett claimed to have killed him. Martil Abel. I'm not sure if it's I think it's supposed to be Abel.
Okay.
She's the widow of John Abel. And she was introduced to this kid in the late 1800s after, and in like it says 1850, but that's not it. In like 1902, she was introduced to this guy, and her husband, who ended up passing away a few years, like 12 years later, no, 16 years later. So he was only like 40. So he wasn't an old man. He was introduced as Billy the Kid, not as whatever name he was going by at the time. So she made a statement that he was Billy the Kid, according to her husband. Jose B. Montoya also claimed that he saw Billy well after Garrett's death, the supposed death. I think it was DeWitt Travis who was the son of his father, knew Billy the Kid, and when he was a young child, he was born. Apparently, he was born right around the time that Billy was supposedly killed, or a little after. But when he was in his teenage years, this guy showed up, and his father said that was Billy the Kid. And Robert E. Lee. I don't know if that sounds familiar to anybody.
No, I've not heard that before. No.
Yeah. He made a statement that he believed by the way he carried himself that Brushy Bill Roberts was Billy the Kid. By stories that he had heard and the way that he met him later on in life after Billy was already supposedly dead.
Uh-huh.
Now, there's several names, like I said, that claim that story of that Billy and the kid had a deal. And the most credible one, but she ended up had passed away before he had made a meet-in, before the lawyer could make a meet-in, was Paulita Maxwell,
Which is
which was his, which was one of Billy's flames
lovers. Yep.
back in the day, back then. But once he left New Mexico, once he left Lincoln County, he never came back for her. But she claimed that they had a deal. But part of the deal was he had to leave. So, and that's pretty much, I mean, like I said, either Bill Roberts either did research in his old age in a small town, in a small, like a really small town of Hyco, Texas, which had a limited library. He didn't drive.
or
He didn't
or
drive, or he really was. So either, or he just was like really, really close to someone that knew, or he actually was Billy the Kid. That's
so
up for that's up for opinion.
so to all of our viewers and listeners, if you watch Young Guns 2, it actually starts out with the lawyer tracking down brushy Bill Roberts in the desert type off the road. And that's uh, pretty much like the start of what George was saying about, is this really brushy Bill Roberts? I also, because I'm partial, I absolutely love those two movies. I highly recommend you go see them. Um, and I was making notes as you were talking. As you know, sometimes if I look over, I'm making notes. Not only are we going to do another show with my notes that I got from Google, I think I made enough notes for a fourth, or well, this is part two now, for a fourth show, all about conspiracies that you brought up. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I never knew anything about whether or not Pat Garrett had a deal with Billy the Kid and or whatever. Um, and I did not know that Poe was an actual person. I thought it was just made up in the movie.
No, no. Yeah,
Um,
I have not found his affidavit. I want to find, it wasn't an affidavit, but a narrative that he wrote. I trying to find it and see if I can look it up. I want to read that, what he stated about how truthful or untruthful Pat Garrett was about
yep.
the killing of Billy. Um, but yeah, several, like I said, several people had done that, had said that. So the advantage of the book that I had read, because I read Pat Garrett's book, and the book I have is actually not the book written by the lawyer. This is written by a guy later on. His name is Daniel A. Edwards, and I don't know when he first wrote it. This is copyright 2018, but I don't think that's when he originally wrote it. But he took the information from the lawyer and he was able to use more modern technology to look up more of the information because he
Uh-huh.
had, he had more things he could look it up because we were still talking, the lawyer did this in the 1950s, so
Right.
it was literally the long way to look it up. Like
Uh-huh.
if the only copy of a certain text or something was only here, you had to go there. You couldn't say, hey, fax me a copy over.
because it was still Western Union and they had to
Yeah.
deliver it,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
it, um, you know, obviously, people are going to say, "Oh, hey, did Jeff and George just, come up with this skit?" No, actually, George had his own research, and when I say that I was not aware of some things, obviously, um, you know, Hollywood has to make a movie or TV show or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
Uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Catchy. I just want to say that.
Yes.
And like
Yeah.
and like I said, I did not think that Poe. So if you watch the movie, they meet at the governor's house, and then when they're on the ridge, that's when he comes over, or they show up on him. I did not know that was a real person, and I subconsciously years ago thought, because there's another rumor that Pat Garrett was shot by a 21-year-old man. So at the time of Billy the Kid's death, he was 21. So now is that true? Obviously, I wrote that down. That would be another show. Um,
Yeah.
but I just I love talking about this stuff, and I think we're definitely going to be making 2 or 3 more shows out of
Oh
this
yeah. Yeah.
because as we had talked off camera, the timeline that I got off Google, and when you watch the show, you'll see me smile because I'm like, and start flipping through those. I'm like, holy shit, that's actually legit, and I'm like, so yeah,
Yeah. 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 It's a lot of the, like I said, it's a lot of hearsay and whatnot
of
anymore.
course,
But the fact that when um when Brushy Bill Roberts told the lawyer certain things, he couldn't just look it up like in a book and say, because he probably had, when he probably went, he probably had knowledge of the known to every guy, I guess you would say known to everyone knowledge, and he probably did some research. But some of the things that Brushy Bill Roberts said, he had to go and do extensive research,
yep,
maybe call somebody, in another, like, hey, could you look this up for me and tell me what it says and whatnot, and stuff like that. So it wasn't common knowledge of
right,
stuff that he was
right,
saying that was actually true. So, like I said, either he did extensive work, which doesn't sound like he could have. And the reason I say that is we all know but even by the movie and whatnot, that Billy was a proficient reader, like he could read and he could write. However, he had the penmanship of a chicken. It was bad. That's why literally I don't know actually if it was Doc Scurlock that wrote the letter to the governor,
yeah,
but someone else did write that letter to the governor as Billy dictated it, because you wouldn't have it would you wouldn't have been able to read it very well.
right, and
So he
and
had
that's
somebody who
also
could write better.
yeah. And that's also in the movie, as you had mentioned, Doc
Yeah,
Scurlock. While
yeah,
Billy the Kid is taking a bath, he's
yeah,
taking the So yep. Yeah.
yeah. Even later in life, Brushy Bill Roberts said that the letters he was sending back and forth, the reason he didn't say much in the letters that he was sending to the lawyer before the lawyer came to see him, and came back to see him, and he started talking a little more, was because his current wife, when he lived in Hico, Texas, that he married later on in life. Um, she didn't know. Like, he had never said to her, "Hey,
Hey,
I was Billy the Kid." Never told her that. He left that
right.
part of his story out anytime he told her. He did tell her later on when things started to come together, and he did let her know that I was Billy the Kid.
Right.
That's when he claimed her. But that's why his letters to her. But she wrote his letters to send to the lawyer
Okay.
because he wanted the lawyer to be able to read them.
Yeah.
He just had terrible penmanship. But that probably comes from his, the old days and whatnot, what had happened. Because another thing that Brushy Bill Roberts had that would show possibilities of him being Billy the Kid, similar injuries to what Billy would have had. He had
I wrote that down. Yep.
a hand injury at one point and
A thigh.
a
Yep.
thigh, and there was just certain ones, and he had scars from an old, not necessarily doctor treated wound, where
Uh-huh.
you get shot in the leg. Well, you can't just go to the hospital, run over to the hospital real quick because you're running from the law. You treat it out there. Now, one other thing the last thing that Brushy Bill Roberts had brought up that not a lot of people knew, after Pat Garrett claimed to have killed Billy the Kid, there was a shootout in the backyard of Pete Maxwell's house. Actually was going on. Now, not everybody talks about it because the big reason everybody thought it was happening was just they heard the shots and they came and they fired. They came and they were shooting. Billy says it was him and another guy who was helping him escape, exchanging with the under deputies of Pat Garrett. That was the thing. And when Billy killed Bell, there was one thing they couldn't figure out. And when Brushy Bill Roberts told his story about killing Bell, then it made sense to a lot of people. There was 2 bullet holes from the gun that Billy was firing. They only found 1 bullet. The bullet they found was in Bell's body. There was a bullet hole in the hallway. They couldn't find a bullet hole. Billy said that during the scuffle, Brushy said during their scuffle, he laid down. He was laying down. Billy was laying down at the top of the stairs. And when he fired, he kind of fired sideways and it hit the side of the hallway and ricocheted into Bell. And that made sense because Bell didn't die like instantly.
Right.
He died quickly, rather quickly, but not right there. Like he was probably still alive when Billy left. But because of where the bullet entered, but that made sense. And how many people would know that there was 2 bullet holes? Know that there was that there was a bullet hole in Bell and a bullet hole in the wall. And it wasn't necessarily a hole, but you could tell a bullet had hit it, but they couldn't find the second bullet. And
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. It's just little things that he pointed out that that's not common knowledge.
Uh-huh.
So
I don't. I know that we're definitely doing a part 3 and a part 4 and probably a part 5 of this. Seriously, you have if you could actually send me some of those pictures of those documents, I want to include it when
Yeah.
we upload this.
I can do that. I got some pictures that I want to, just so everybody can make their own opinion, but this guy, Daniel Edwards, my cat's getting into something out there, I can tell. Daniel A. Edwards is the author of the book that I read. He had gone through and done some more extensive research, and there's some overlay pictures of Brushy Bill Roberts and Billy the Kid, where they literally overlay. I don't know how clear it'll come out though, because we're talking probably early 1900s are the pictures of Brushy Bill Roberts, and of course we know Billy the Kid's is in his only known photo is in the 1870s. So
Yep. And I have that written down. Yep.
But yeah, but I mean, he even went through and he had a picture that was the famous picture of Billy the Kid. You look at that picture, and then they have a picture of Brushy Bill Roberts standing with some of his other friends. They were in something, I don't remember, military or a military thing or something. And you just look at the way that they stand, the way that they lean, and you could see the similarities in them as they stand there. So yeah, I can look up those. I can look at those pictures and see if I'm able to get a good picture. But I'll definitely send you copies of the pictures of the affidavits and whatnot.
Absolutely, absolutely. Did we cover everything that you wanted to talk about? Just
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's so many little details. I mean, we could have gone on for hours.
yeah,
Just the little details that you and I wouldn't. I mean, I don't want
yeah.
to say you and I. If we were in the 1950s, we wouldn't know.
Mhm.
We wouldn't be able to look it up. We wouldn't be able to research it. Not well, anyway. It would have taken a lot of work. Just the similarities between what Brushy Bill Roberts said and stories known of Billy the Kid.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
no, I absolutely agree.
yeah,
But you know what? That is what part 3, part 4, and possibly part
right.
5 is for. So just before I end the show, I'm going to give a couple spoilers here. Some names to all of our listeners and viewers. Have you ever heard of the name Henry McCarty? What about William H. Bonney or Henry Antrim? Those are names that will come up in part 3, part 4, and part 5. And also, before we go, only because I didn't know I was going to get quizzed, I'm going to give you one question. What allegedly was Billy the Kid's mom's name?
I don't know off the top of my head. I did know. I did know, but I don't know it right off the top of my head.
Okay, so according to my extensive research on Google, her name was Catherine.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Now that you say it.
Yep. And Catherine, his mom, married William Antrim, which remember, I don't want to give too much away for our spoiler, but everything that you were saying in the beginning, I'm sitting here making like little X's by it because when we do part 3, 4, and 5, you're right about some things. So,
Yeah.
but with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to another episode of JK'z Watchable Hour. My host or my co-host, as always, the iconic, the one and only George Muzzy. I am J Dubs. I'm sorry, I was just sitting here thinking about all the stuff I want to talk about. It's just we just don't have that much time. But be on the lookout for part 3, 4, and 5 of Billy the Kid and all that, and a barking dog in the background. I hope you
Yep.
guys enjoyed this show. Like, comment, follow, and subscribe. With that, George, thank you for taking time out of your busy
Yep.
schedule to sit here with me and joke and laugh and talk. I know you're probably hoarse. But with that, I'm going to end the show. Thank you, everybody. Where is that button? There it is.